Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about how do we nourish our body. We talk about how do we nourish our mind and our soul and our spirit on this radio show for over 15 years now. Today we're going to be talking about how do we nourish our physical being, this human body that we are carrying around. What do we put into it? How does it resonate with us? How is it assimilated? How is it honoring our body? And furthermore, is it something that we are treating our body and just saying, this is what I wish to put in, I wish to have it help me, support me in keeping this body going? So many times, in the years, I guess in the past several years, people have been saying, let's do this diet, let's do that one, you have to eat this way, you have to eat that way. And people have kind of felt like they've been pulled along, and said, you need to do this. And many times, there'd be failures, and they'd say, it's not working, it isn't fixing this. Perhaps the fix that you are seeking is what you need to be doing is listening to your body. And it will tell you what to do versus someone else leading you along the way. Today, my guest is Sarah Bayliss. Her book is Do Nourish, How to Eat for Resilience. It truly is about being able to say, how do you hear what your body is saying? How do you pay attention to your symptoms or what's going on? And how do you make choices going forward that might serve you? That's what we'll be talking about today. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jeanette, for having me. It's a real honour to be here, and I'm very much looking forward to having some time talking with you today.
I'm so glad to have you, Sarah, and as you shared, you're all the way from England, so this is very awesome, and we just love to have our guests from other parts of the countries, because if we find out we have a common view. We have a common way in which we live, but we just don't even recognize it, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. I think we all have a common way in terms of how we're interacting with the world, what we're eating, when we're sleeping, how much stress we're exposed to.
Yes.
And so no matter where we are in the world, we're all getting those exposures from the outside world that we are all trying to navigate and respond appropriately to.
Absolutely, and I think that's very important because sometimes people will say, well, this culture or this race or this country or this person or this doctor, all of these people eat differently. And we say we want to try to fit ourselves into a box, and then we get stuck. Because then we say, it doesn't feel right to me. And I think what we're going to talk about today, Sarah, I want to focus on is how do we know what feels right for us, irregardless of that box, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good question, and I think that the closer we are to ourselves, the better we know what to eat.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, begins with this idea of taking away the things we shouldn't be eating. Like most of us know that we shouldn't be eating sugar, we shouldn't be eating processed foods. And when we take away sort of the baseline inputs that we know we shouldn't eat and we know the body doesn't need, I think we have a great opportunity to be able to find out what it is we do need. And to be able to hear those messages internally, I think it's almost as if we're cleaning up things around us to be able to hear our own internal voice, our own nutritional demands, because the body, it tells us, it gives us feedback, and that feedback is incredibly valuable, and we can often close that feedback down or ignore it or not listen. I think by the very basic steps of eating as well as we think we can, removing the processed foods, too much sugar, too much alcohol, we can start to begin to nourish the body with what it actually does need.
Here in New Orleans, we have a saying that we do not eat to live, we live to eat. Because it's very much people enjoy food. Food is their celebration. Food is their, almost like their religion here, However, that it's also about eating from the earth here. The seafood is everywhere. So everybody relishes and they do eat what is local. They eat what is coming from the Gulf. They eat what is grown, in the land or whatever. And so I think the idea is that can you see what's around you that is really healthy to be able to start to eat, rather than perhaps going to find out something that's in a box on a shelf or in a can, which is so totally different. Many times people say, I have to go on a diet, and then they start eating regular food, thinking the diet food is the regular food, when in essence, the diet is really releasing the stuff that you don't want to be eating. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, it's almost like a mind game in a way. It's sort of saying we're taking a diet from the processed foods. We're not taking a diet and now eating just healthy. In other words, their mind hasn't clicked over, perhaps?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting concept I share when I'm talking to groups of people, and I say that the first step to eating well is to eat real food. And people go, well, what is real food? I begin by saying real food doesn't have a barcode. If you go to a butcher's or a local butcher's, you will get the meat from the counter, there's no barcode. If you go to your local grocers and you pick up some vegetables, you're going to get some vegetables, there's no barcode. And it's almost like when we go back as close as we can to nature, they provide the food that's real. And if we eat as close as to what our surroundings are providing, that is essentially optimal, optimal health, optimal diet. We're eating what's around us, what's in season, where we're potentially biologically from, what's grown in that area, and we're living in tune with our environment. And that is essentially the very beginnings to eat well. And I think you're right. People are really, really confused about what is good and what is bad, because we're often told things are good when they're potentially bad. There's lots of options available in the marketplace that aren't necessarily considered real food. They're packaged, they have barcodes, and there might be lots of lovely branding and names that make us think that these foods are good. And as you say, there's lots of diets that people are talking about or trying to follow because they feel like they are going to provide them with some sort of benefit, whether that's losing weight, whether that's improving their mind, whether that's longevity. And so it makes the marketplace really confusing. And I think, the very basic, simplest of it is if it's grown from the ground, and if it comes from a local, an animal within the local region, or it comes from a tree, it's more likely to be, real. And if you're eating real, that is in itself a diet, a good diet.
Yeah. You know what I also think, too, Sarah? There was controversy about a while back, wine is good for you. It has these properties and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then people started drinking tons of it, And I had posted at one time, and I said, the body has purpose. Whatever goes in, must be utilized. In other words, it must be assimilated. It has a reason in the body. It's part of a chemical reaction, and everything is supposed to be in sync. And that when it's not in sync, you say, okay, what did you put in your body that isn't there? So when you think about it, alcohol does not have a cellular receptor in your body. There's no reason for alcohol to be in your body and connect with the cell for a chemical or a physiological process. There just isn't, And when you think about some of these other things, these ingredients on the list, you're going, what do these do? Are they necessary in my body? In other words, is this product, its chemical composition, what does it do in my body? And is it necessary for my body to be able to assimilate today for health? And the answer is 99% no. Those don't, that's just not the way it works. Our body doesn't have a receptor for a can of this, that, or the other, or for alcohol, or for these fake sugars or whatever. It doesn't have a space for it. And when things when you put them in your body and they latch on to the cell or to the blood vessel or to the muscle or the nerves or whatever it is, it forms a foreign compound. And that foreign compound is when you become heavy, when you become ill, when you end up with diseases, and we end up with some chronic things that start to seem to snowball. Because there's something foreign in your body that you keep putting in that doesn't belong there, right?
Yeah. I heard a really good analogy. I can't remember who it was by. I was talking about processed food industry, and it was comparing it to your car. So if you imagine your car and the reader in the car that tells you how much petrol you have is broken, well, what are you going to do before you go for a long drive? You're just going to continue to fill up that car. And this analogy is what processed food do to the brain. We're eating these substances that the body doesn't understand, the brain gets confused by, and all it does is drive cravings, because what it's seeking is real amino acids, or it's seeking healthy fats, or it's seeking a fatty acid, it's seeking actual nutrients. And it's not getting those nutrients, and all we're feeling is cravings, and we're reading those cravings as potential sugar. Actually, it's not. It's the brain seeking proper nutrition.
Right. It's all about nurturing your body from the inside out, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when we think about it, when we see something, we say, oh, I want that. I want, let's use an example. I want some tacos today. You have a memory, and the memory is what's driving your food choice. And if you could think about that and you say, but I'm really hungry, I want that, you're saying, where does that come from? I remember it. I saw it. I used to eat it. It made me feel good. And I think if we can understand that process, that it is our consciousness that is driving our food choices, our pictures, our satiety, our ideas of how our stomach feels and how our body feels, we've kind of lost the connection, because we're now basing ourselves upon feeling good and some memories that might have been safety or security or whatever to make our food choices, perhaps?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think if we're not giving the body the appropriate fuel and providing it with, as you sort of said, man-made chemicals, what they're doing is those food items are designed to want us to eat more of them, right? They're tapping into our dopamine and reward pathways. They're driving those cravings. We're experiencing a moment of pleasure by eating that food. We remember that experience, and we're seeking more of those experiences to feel that pleasure again. And we can end up getting stuck on this cycle. And actually, what we're missing is nutrients. And actually, when we get the nutrients, we also do get that pleasure, but you get that sustained pleasure, that sense of fullness, that sense of satisfaction, without that hit that's driving that sort of feeling where you're remembering what it was like to have that food and you're wanting more of it. And I think it's not just food. I think the environments in which we are living in are all driving that dopamine response, whether it's technology, whether it's blue light, whether it's TV or internet or excessive shopping. We sort of live in this cycle where we're chasing these dopamine drivers and we're craving more of these things. And I think the more we can sort of take a step back, unclutter, pause, make more intentional choices, and actually the more pleasure we would get from our food and potentially our surroundings.
Yeah. What you share also in your book, Sarah, is how do you get started? And I think how you get started is write down actually what you're eating for a week. And just like randomly put it down. And a lot of people don't like to write it down because then they find themselves not telling the truth, with the pen.
Yeah.
And I say, take your cell phone and every time you sit down to eat, click a picture. Take a photo journal of what you're eating, for a week and look back at it and say, where did it come from? What was it made out of? And who made it? And you would be shocked at how many times you hardly ever know exactly what's in your food, and because it was made by someone else. I mean, you haven't even cooked or made your own food. And, I'm almost 70. Let me tell you, I cook all my food. I mean, it's rare that I go out. Maybe 2-3 times a year, if that. I just don't. It's just not me. Because I was kind of brought up that way. That was the way it was, we just didn't. But I can tell you what's in my food. But when I go to a restaurant or whatever, you want to ask and you're going, what kind of oil did you use? Did you use margarine? Did you use a lot of sugar in this? Or are you perhaps maybe doing low carb and you put this fake sugar on my stuff? Or what kind of meat is this? And is it fresh? Is it clean? So all of these are questions that once you start delving into them, you go, what does my body really need? And you want to ask the questions, and you start saying, whoa, you mean that's what was in my food? Isn't that the way to be able to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to inspect our own behaviour before we can expect change. And the only way to do that is to do it in a way that is honest but self-compassionate about it. So you're not giving yourself grief by the decisions you make. And I think most people, potentially don't like writing a food diary because they know that something's not right and they start to feel guilty about their decisions. And I think that's not the way to start. The way to start is to be, okay, right, I'm just going to write down everything I ate, where it's come from, and I'm going to look back. And I'm going to look back with being kind to myself and without that self-criticism or judgment. I think when we take the self-criticism judgment away, we can inspect our behaviours more freely. And I think so many of us put demands on ourselves about our own behaviours. That's why we don't like to put things down on paper. And I think when you do that, you can start to see really small little insights that start to help you think about how you're going to begin your journey to change. And it might be as simple as, right, I'm not going to go and buy that breakfast from that place. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to make my breakfast at home. I'm going to have some yogurt and fruit or some nuts and seeds. And I'm just going to do that for a whole week. And I'm going to see how I go. And you can imagine if you just did that, that is, 21 to 30 breakfasts a month. That adds up. These small changes add up, and in a year, you've changed 360 meals, right? And I think when you do that, you look back and go, okay, I've changed that meal. I feel great. What's next? Go back to the food diary. Okay, so maybe I'm going to start adding a side salad to my lunches. And it's just about being honest with yourself, being compassionate with yourself, and just making that change that you know that you can do, and it's easy. And I think we can all find those when we put pen to paper and understand where we're at, but without being a little bit critical of ourselves, without looking back
right.
and critiquing ourselves, is probably the best way to not critical, critiquing ourselves, we can't do that. And I think it's really where the true insight comes from, those small little insights you see in your current behavior, where you can start to make change.
You know, I had a patient at one time, and they just simply insisted they had to have this particular junk food in the house. I mean, it was just the way it was. I said, that's absolutely fine. You know what? Buy it. Put it on the counter. And put a little sign next to it, and that'll say, can I make a better choice? So every time you go to reach for it, and you see that little sign there, something in your thoughts, if you read it, your consciousness and your subconscious will actually hear the words. And then you might make a different choice. So for someone who has been decades and decades on junk food, maybe that's where you need to start, you know?
Yeah.
It's about training the mind, so to speak, you know?
Well, it's also, as you said so beautifully, it's just about slowing down time. You know, by asking yourself 3 times, or by putting that note on that food, you're sort of slowing down time so you can make a more intentional choice. And I think this is what all of this is about. It's about, you know, taking away the clutter, slowing things down so that you can see more clearly, you know, the decisions that are going to support your health rather than, you know, risk your health. And it's hard to do, you know, it's not easy, but it can be easy when you break it down to those small simple steps, like you just gave that beautiful example of your, you know, of one of your clients or the patients. Yeah. And that might have a profound impact on them.
You know, also too, I can distinctly remember there are times in our lives in which we do need to eat and drink whatever's in front of us. I think of right after Hurricane Katrina, there was no food available at all. And when the Red Cross came through, they had Chef Boyardee ravioli in a can, an orange, and a bag of cookies. And the answer was, you know what? This is going to nurture my soul for today because this is what there is.
Yeah.
So I think we have to understand that there are many times in our lives when our choices, we need to make the best choice we have, but we cannot say to ourselves and create an idea in our body that it's a sacrifice. Because once we do that, then we don't end up getting what we need. I needed to put my thoughts about healthy eating away for a while because I needed to eat what was given today because that was what was available. And I just said, thank you so much, and have gratitude for what's in front of you. So there may be times like when you're out and you just can't eat it. And maybe they having hamburgers and fries at the event and say, oh, awesome. Thank you so much. I needed to eat today. This is what is in front of me. So the answer is, you know, you say, would you like my fries? And just take 2 of them. Take the hamburger and take off the bun and, you know, get rid of that sugar thing. And you might be sitting next to someone, as I always do, and they say, oh, I want a burger, but I don't want any of that stuff on top, like the lettuce, tomato, and onion. I'll say, fabulous. Can I have yours? So I collected everybody's toppings, and I had a wonderful salad. Do you see what I'm saying? So the idea is that how can you navigate a world that is very tumultuous at times? It is very stressful. It is very hard sometimes. But the answer is you can do it if you just have a little bit of creativity. So I took everybody's toppings and I had a salad. I took the burger and I just broke it up on top of the salad. I was good to go. And I also made sure I had the 2 fries that I really wanted. But I didn't have a whole dish of them. I didn't need them. And I think the idea is that can we allow ourselves to do the best that we can?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. I think there's 2 parts to this. One, understanding a little bit about what it is that you need to feed the body. So once we have the baseline understanding that you need your proteins, you need your healthy fats, you need your fiber, and if you're going to choose carbs, you want them to be complex. When we sort of know the basics, we sort of have that understanding of what balance looks like. And then you can then use that knowledge to your advantage in those situations. And I think, you know, as you said at the beginning of this talk, part of nutrition and health and wellness is about assimilation. It's about digesting well. It's about getting the nutrients chewing properly, getting the digestive enzymes working on, making sure they're absorbed. None of that works if you're stressed, right? None of that's you're not going to assimilate properly. You're not going to break down your food. You might not get your hydrochloric acid up. You might not be able to break down your B12, etc. So first and foremost, is when you're in a situation that's slightly out of your control, is to accept the situation and be okay with it and just let go. Let go and go, with the basis of my knowledge, in this context, what is the best decision I can make and enjoy it? And I think part of nutrition, health and wellness is not allowing the environment to drive an element of that stress. And I talk to my clients about this. I'm like, when you're thinking about resilience, nutrition is one pillar. And there's like 7 pillars I talk about. Another pillar is community and connection. And if you're eating out with your friends and family, that is a community and connection pillar that is going to drive your health. It's a really important part of resilience. So if that means you're going to be doing that in an environment where the food won't be perfect, let go of it and do the best you can within the context of that environment. I think we can all do that to some degree. We can all make better choices within the context of that environment, and we just need to be okay with it.
Yeah. And I think also, too, I wanted to touch on this, Sarah, is when you talk about resilience, I think about becoming an activist for your own life, but sharing with others. So, I had, there was a time I was working within a assisted living nursing home situation, and I was watching what they were given for food, and I'm going, there's nothing real here. The cheese came wrapped in plastic. Most of the stuff came from cans or bags in the back. And I was just watching, and the people were not getting better. So slowly, like a little bit at a time, I really didn't go in and try to push it over on the people, but I would have my own lunch and they would ask me, oh, that looks good. Oh, what is that about? Why are you eating that? So eventually, little by little, maybe one change a year started to happen. So I think, how can we be the activist to be able to instill change? And it might be one thing a year. It might be one thing for a person's lifetime. But how can we just say, I'm going to do what I can because that's what I'm truly here for, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, that's lovely. I think, what more of a perfect way to create influence than doing it yourself within that space and other people being excited to see that happen. I'm always thinking about this and more so about my daughter and her relationship with her friends and what all of her friends are eating, and how can I help my daughter make better decisions when all of her friends are exposing her to bad quality food? What can I get her to eat that is tasty and potentially getting her friends to go, oh, I'll give that a go. So I think it's really incredibly important. If we can all play one little role within that context, then we are going to slowly help change. And in my world right now, that's in my daughter's school. What can I help them do to help the children make better choices?
Right.
That's a tough one, though, with kids.
Yeah.
With teenagers.
Well, I know. Well, my kids are all in their 40s, and I already went through all of that. I remember sending my daughter. She said, "Oh, I don't feel good," and I took her. They didn't have juice boxes and stuff back then. They had a little thermos.
Yeah.
And I can remember taking her thermos, and I put orange juice in it with echinacea. I said, "Here, go to the bus stop." And every time her friends would say, "What do you have?" she'd say, "Oh, this is my cold medicine." And none of her friends would bother her, but she would be just fine, And I think the idea is to be able to say, I'm going to experiment within the world of food or the world of herbs or the world of something that's out there in the plants and everything that's available to me. And maybe I might find something else that I might enjoy. Rather than have an elimination diet, maybe you just add things in that are more enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always try and teach that when I'm thinking about nutrition. I always think about, with my clients, if we add more of the good stuff, maybe the bad stuff will go away,
Right.
And that's the angle I try and think of. And, unless somebody's coming to me with, food sensitivities, and that's a whole different matter. But, try and add in and then hopefully take less away.
Well, I think I've learned, over the decades that it all comes full circle. You know what I mean? It's so funny because when you're in your younger age, you think about, I need to keep a healthy body. I need to keep my healthy weight. Then you need to be able to nourish your kids. And then you need to be able to whatever. Oh, my goodness. Finally, when you get to be older like me, it's like I'm just eating, and it's barely like 1/3 of what I used to eat, my earlier decades. And I'm going, this is just important I feel like this today. And it's okay. Do you know what I mean? And it might just be an egg for breakfast, and then it might just be a salad in the afternoon, and that might be it. And I'm thinking all of the struggles that we put up in our lifetime about food and all of the harshness that we've given our body. So wonder it even survives, don't you think?
I do quite a lot of corporate presentations, and I start talking about the state of sickness and how things have changed since the days our biology was born, and the rates of chronic disease going up, and I pause and go, but we're all, you'd think we'd be dead and sick by now. And obviously we are getting sicker, but you're right. We are really resilient, right? The body is really resilient. We have resilience. And I think it's important to understand what we're up against. I think it's important to understand the environment in which you live in and what your environmental inputs are, and understanding from those which are working for you and which are harming you, so that you have a better ability to make more conscious decisions without seeing the need to be perfect, because we can't be perfect. And when the body's healthy, it detoxifies well. It does a lot of the work for us. And I think coming from a place of anxiety is only going to make everything worse. Or we come from a place of, okay, I get these things aren't great, and I get these things are good. Let's just focus on these when I can, and I will be strong.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Sarah, it was such a pleasure to have you with us today to be able to talk about the choices of food and where they actually come from. Is it our mind, our consciousness, our memories, and how can we nourish our body? Because many people will say, I'm waiting for someone to tell me what to do, versus what you and I are both saying, what can you ask of yourself, versus why are you waiting for someone else to tell you, yes?
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think the only thing I would build on that is understanding some very basics about food can help you do that better, and that's what I try to do in the book. Just get some really basic frameworks in place so people understand what the body needs to nourish itself, or what you need to nourish it, and then from that very basic level, you can then listen to yourself what it is that you need, and have a greater ability to connect the dots between the nutrients that you're craving, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Sarah, it was such a pleasure to have you with us. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Yeah, I have a website, which is sarahbaylissnutrition.co.uk. And on there, I have an opportunity to sign up to a newsletter. I send newsletters to my audience every few weeks, just about things I'm coming across and I'm interested in. I have an Instagram page as well, which is Sarah Bayliss _nutrition. And I am also on LinkedIn, and I can't actually remember my profile name for my LinkedIn.
Very good.
But you can link everything from my website. So, and then, of course, you can access the book in the US and in the UK, and that's Do Nourish, How to Eat for Resilience.
Very good. Well, Sarah, it was such a pleasure to have you with us today. We thank you so much for joining us, because I think sometimes people will say just need a little inspiration or maybe a little bit of a shove sometimes to get started, and I think that's what we provided. So we thank you so much today.
Oh, Dr. thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. And there's probably lots more I could be asking you and learning from your own wisdom. But thank you for having me here today.
Very good. Well, Sarah, you'll have to come on another time and we'll have a more detailed discussion, yes?
That sounds great.
Awesome. If you'd like to find out more information about Sarah Bayliss, again, the book is Do Nourish, How to Eat for Resilience. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about being able to say, how can I make a choice? How can I know what's going on? How can I see that perhaps, I really don't need this in my life and I'd like to try and dance with some other options. Check out the book. Check out your local grocery store. Check out your local farmer's market, and perhaps say to your neighbor that is sitting down next to you, hey, what do you have on your plate? Why are you eating that? And why are you not eating something else? And just ask the questions. It's about having fun with your food and saying, you know what, I'm going to nourish my body from the inside out. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.